Welcome to Championship Culture. Got a fantastic guest for us tonight. Roderique is the head football coach at Webb City High School in Southwest Missouri. And Coach has actually won 12 state championships. He's played for 14 state championships. And Coach, I appreciate you doing this so much. And I'm not the only one that wants to steal all your good ideas. So excited to have you with us, buddy.
Hey, thanks a lot, Joe, man. It's great to be here. One of the things that, I've never gotten on one of these Zoom calls or a phone call or a virtual meeting that I didn't learn something myself. Just to have the opportunity to meet somebody new, is always fantastic. And that's the great thing about this profession. There's a lot of great people involved in it all over the place. And it's a matter of just trying to steal ideas. And that's what we all do all the time.
Well, I'll tell you, probably the first time this has ever happened, someone just out of the blue texted me and gave me your name and said, you have got to talk to this guy. So, I immediately jumped on Facebook and found you, and you were so kind to say yes, and you're up early in the morning to do this, and I appreciate it, man. So let's start. Question number one, can you give a 1-minute elevator introduction of yourself?
Okay. So I've been the head coach at Webb City High School for 24 years. Before that, I was an assistant football coach at Pitt State. Pittsburgh, Kansas is about 30 miles from where we live here in Southwest Missouri. And the Gorillas, they've back in the day, I think from 90 through 96 when I was there, and we played in 3 national championship games. It was a really good time in the Pitt State era. I played there for 4 years for a guy named Dennis Franchione. I had a couple really good coaches in my position, Jerry Keel, Gary Patterson, Tim Back. I had 3 guys that are, high-level college coaches now. But a lot of what I did and a lot of what I do, I think now goes back to those days as a player, as a coach. We're kind of different than most people around here. Everybody wants to be in spread. We're a split back veer team, and we run it proudly. We've been so blessed here. I've raised 3 kids that have come through our school system. Our daughter, she was a all-state basketball player, played college basketball. I had 2 sons that were both, all 3 of our kids were able to win state championships in, basketball, football. Even our youngest one won in track. And so I've been a blessed man with this job. And we've, in the last 3 years, our lives have changed tremendously. We got 3 grandkids, 3 grandsons, actually. So a daughter-in-law and a son-in-law. So towards the end of your career, man, I just feel like I'm a really, really blessed man to have been here.
Awesome. It's funny. It's such a small world. I was a GA at Valdosta State during Pittsburgh's heyday. And when I first came in there, before Hal Mumme corrupted my mind, I wanted to be an option guy. And you're one of the teams that I would get film on because you guys were a prolific veer team. And I at that time, I thought I wanted to be a Georgia Southern triple option team, but I was collecting, all the, when you kind of, back then, that was about the only way you could get film is if you were a college guy. And so that was one of the schools I would collect film on, but then Hal corrupted me completely and I became an air raid guy not too long after that. But I remember collecting Pittsburgh film because that was right in the middle of the heyday of your run there. And
boy, it was
a great program.
That was some good times. Played in Florence, Alabama. Those 3 championships games we played were in Florence, Alabama, and those were great ways to spend December for sure.
Right, and that's where they played the national championship there. But North Alabama was in our conference, and they were an option team. Yeah, we had some fierce battles with them also. So that was a small world. Question number 2: how do you define culture in your program?
That's a really good question. I think that's a tough question to answer. I've got a quote. I think back of I've got a quote that I've had it for a long time in my mind. I think it's actually a Harry S. Truman, who's actually a Missouri guy. I spent a little time not too far up the road from us here, but it's not. My quote is not the same as what his is, but I've got this, and I know I used to say it a lot, and probably still do, because I had a kid in shop class that we had some kind of a new tool where they could go in and router the lettering out. And so the kid made one for me and gave it to me before he graduated. But it goes something like this. It says, it's amazing what can be accomplished when everybody works together and nobody cares who gets the credit. And I couldn't quote Harry Truman, what he actually said, but you know, it sums up my time here. I think at Webb City, we have a culture, I guess, that is where kids care more about being successful as a team on the field than they do about their individual accomplishments. I think that's you know, we talk about having a great attitude and a great work ethic every day. If you show up with those two things, you know, great things can happen for you. And you know, I don't think really a lot of coaches say a lot of things, but do you really do those things? I think that's what defines your culture. You know, by not just, you know, we put all these posters on the wall, and we can talk and we can say all these things, but are you really doing that? If there was one word that I would use to describe culture, it would be expectations. You know, what is your expectations? You know, and I make no you know, apologies to our parents when we talk about coaching with high school kids. You know, we expect our kids to show up every day. You know, we expect them to be there, and you know, no excuses. You know, and I tell you what, this year has probably challenged me more, just with what's gone on with this pandemic, and I think I bet a lot of coaches would tell you the same thing. It's challenged me more than any of the last 30 years that I've been coaching, just because you just can't, you know, you can't have that kind of expectation maybe like you had. So I like to think that I've grown a little bit this year. And then I think another part of that is not being satisfied with where you're at. You know, we win, I think we won 5 in a row there from 2000 to 2014, 5 state championships. And then we go to the 6th one. It was actually my youngest son who was our quarterback, and he'd played for a couple of years for us. And, you know, we fumbled the ball with 21 seconds left from our 1 foot line into the end zone, and we didn't win the game. Turned around, handed off, and we fumbled in the end zone. And so we ended up losing a 6 state championship. And all I remember was just the I'll never forget that feeling in the locker room with those kids, and everybody is upset, everybody's disappointed, everybody, you know. And for me as a head coach, it's like, hey, I made a bad call. You know, I didn't call the right play. And I think the guy that leads your program, the guy that's in charge of the program, needs to be the one to step up and take responsibility. You know, be the first one to look in the mirror and say, hey, I didn't do very well. And you know, I think when kids see that, and when assistant coaches see that, I think they understand that, hey, you know, if that guy can mess up, you know, and be accountable for that, then by gosh, I can too. And then that's the first thing. But I think the second thing is just understanding that we can't, there's always a way to get better. You know, you can win 15 games in Missouri and win a state championship, but if you're not trying to get better, then you know, something's wrong. You're not going to get better, and then, you know, your culture, your expectations are going to drop. And so when I think of culture, I think it's very inclusive. I mean, there's a lot of things involved with that.
2 things. One, you know, I'm with you on how things are so different this year. You know, it was the first. I've been you know, you come to practice no matter what. If you're sick, you sit to the side and watch. But you got to, and this was the first time. You know, I remember being in that first Zoom meeting, and when we get to be our age, you get players. Your coaches are former players a lot of times, and I had 2 former players. And when I had to stand in front of everybody and say, if you don't feel good, don't come. And I had two former players who are coaches. I think they both fainted when they heard that. They had never heard me say that before, but you had to change it. My big question, because I'm 53. How old are you, Coach?
I'm exactly the same age. You know, when I was thinking about that, because I've got about half of my guys are guys that played for me now, and you know what they tell me, and I'm sure you've heard the same thing, is, Coach, you've gotten really soft over the years.
I mean, listen, you've changed. You're a lot nicer than you used to be. But
Yeah, amen. That's exactly
but
right.
I guess my big question for guys our age, how because winning creates expectations and it creates a standard and it creates a certain amount of culture gets built just from winning. But at what point did you become intentional about building culture and building relationship? They didn't even used to call it culture back. When we got
Right,
started, it wasn't called culture. It was,
right.
maybe at some point they started calling it team building. But I can remember when you came and you practiced and you went and you played and you went home, and that was pretty much how football went. And you were just glad to be a part of it, as a player.
Yep.
But at what point, I always like the, guys our age, we had to on purpose kind of change our thinking about it. And then I like to compare, the young guys coming up, does it just come more natural to them? But can you remember a point when you had to get very intentional about building culture, or was it just, you just magically, because you're so successful where you are?
That's a good one. I've thought about that a lot, actually, Joe. And I think about I think about I think of it just like I think of leadership maybe and some of those things. But somebody asked me what would you do different if you were starting all over again, if you knew now or if you knew then what you know now. And one of the things that always and I've we were when I started, I was so focused on winning, just the what happens on the field. When we go to practice, we got to have everybody there, and we got to do this, and this, and really having that focus and the X's and the O's and the conditioning and all the things that go towards winning a game. And I'm not saying win at all costs, because I've never felt that way. I've always felt like, if we can't win with class and dignity, if we can't do those things with the right way, they're really not worth doing. I tell our kids that all the time. I don't want you to act like you've done this before, and act like this is not something that just happens. Don't take it for granted. But I think, I don't know where that transition was, but I know my mindset or my mentality went from there to, and it's maybe halfway through. I'm not sure that I think about that, and I tell our younger coaches, it's like, if you knew this, if you know this early and you can focus on that, the winning and all those things will take care of themselves. And that's where it's kind of been. I think of it as a transition for myself. At what I think it's probably been a little bit at a time. Where the focus for me, now so much more is on relationships. The relationships with those players, and just developing those things, and trying to help them become better people, and understand, that when you get out of here, it's going to be tough, and you're going to have times when you're going to fail, and you're going to have to get back up, and you're going to struggle, and you're not going to want to go to work, but all the things that athletics does for us, just that commitment, dedication, the work ethic, and those things, man, those are exactly what happens. I think a lot of it has to do with, for me, as I've been through it, and you may say the same, is when you don't know those things when you're young, because you haven't had those guys come back to you and say, Coach, man, thanks for doing this. I'm glad you made me work the way you made me work. Anytime we have a kid, goes off to college, and we're not like a mecca. We've had some guys that have played in the Division I football, and we've had a lot of small college guys. We've got a kid that's actually with the Ravens right now, and played against the Steelers. He was the third string quarter or center that came in and played. And these kids, when they tell you, they go off to school, or some of them have gone off to the military, and they come back and they say, Coach, man, I'm so glad that I grew up here, and I'm so glad you guys made me do the things right, because when I showed up at X wherever it was, that it was easy for me, because a lot of the kids hadn't been prepared for that tough, just being mentally tough to be able to handle the workload, or be able to handle the butt chewings they got, or whatever it may be. And that's kind of been for me the transition of understanding And you don't know that because it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. You know, when you're young, you just don't know those things because you haven't experienced those relationships.
That's beautiful. I guess I can almost trace it, my development, through going to clinics. You know, when I first started going to clinics, all I wanted was a good play.
Yep.
And then as I got a few more years on me, then it was more important about drills and techniques. And then
Yep.
about 15 years ago, all of a sudden it changed to just give me a good program idea. You know, that's
Yeah.
all. Just give me one good program idea. So I guess I could see the change through my goals going to a clinic. And
Right.
I'm like you, I can't quite put a finger on when it changed in the program, except probably like you said, when you start having that contact with players that are coming back, it changes you.
Yeah, I spent 20 years in the weight room here at Webb, and now and I've been the AD for the last 15. So I was an athletic director slash weight room guy slash head football coach, and then the last 4 or 5 years I've been away from the weight room. But I remember just in the weight room process of every day, and it's work. I mean, it's work getting kids engaged in every single day of the year, trying to get them to work, and whether you're doing, whatever it is in the gym or in the weight room. And I remember being very intentional at one point in time. And I don't know if it was just a epiphany for me sitting in the weight room. And I said, I have got to, every single kid in here, it's not fun being in here with every single kid because some of them don't work at all. I mean, they just don't have a good work ethic, and I'm not necessarily talking about, football kids or not. We got non-football kids, football kids in there. But there's a lot of kids that I was like, I've got to do a better job of reaching every single kid in the weight room. And so one of the things I told myself, I said, okay, every single day that you go in the weight room, you need to make a positive, meaningful, comment to every kid. So as you're working, you get your weight room situated, I'm walking up and down and but you got to catch them doing it right. You got to catch them doing something good. And I'll be honest, that was really hard to do for every kid because some of them don't have a real good work ethic. Their technique's not very good. But I was really intentional in trying to give them one positive thing. Now we can walk around and say, good job, but it has to be meaningful. You have to catch them doing something right. It's got to be a positive, meaningful comment to every kid. Well, and then I started thinking about that and I started seeing some positive things in the weight room. And then it's like, this could be taken to the practice field as a coach. If you can catch that kid doing something right and give him some positive, it's amazing how much they buy into what you're saying, after that. And I've learned from every coach I've ever been around, even guys that I've had coaching with me, I look at him and I see, well, how does he get the most out of that kid? How is he able to keep that kid? When that coach talks, they're locked into that guy, or how does he keep that relationship with those kids? So I've had to, that's the thing. If you quit learning, I think you probably quit growing and getting better.
Well, I just wrote that one down, Coach, because I've attempted that before, and it hasn't been my highest priority. But I've heard other good coaches say that you gotta have a positive interaction with each of your players every single day. But it all of a sudden it means a lot more when I hear it from you.
Yeah. Well, I think that, it's like you try to say, hey, what's meaningful to that kid, man. Sometimes we don't know what's meaningful to that kid. That's what I think the psychology part of it, trying to figure that out too.
Oh yeah, I'm with you. All right, big one. Question number 3: what are the 3 best things you do to build culture in your program?
I would say the first thing is holding every kid accountable. Holding every kid accountable in your program. And when we talk about that as coaches, I think we talk about, when somebody hears that, they think of that kid that's a challenge. They think of that kid that maybe doesn't know how to do everything right all the time. I can promise you, if you talk to some of the greatest players that we've had, they will tell you that I was probably harder on them than I was, on some of the other guys. My own sons would so I had the chance to coach 2 sons that they both play quarterback, and I had 3 nephews. that played quarterback. They all that played quarterback for me. So had five nephews or sons that all played here, and it was about a 12, 13-year span. Of course, it was ironically pretty good times in Webb City football history. But so the kids that are really good, I mean, they don't need a lot, but I'm holding those guys accountable. I've always felt like too, if you can make that worst kid, the best kid on your team, and then the worst kid on your team. If you can make it meaningful for the worst kid on your football team and in your program, I think that says a lot. That does a lot for culture, as far as holding them accountable. It's like, and we've had a lot of special ed kids that come out and they want to be a part of something. And we always talk about, being a part of something bigger than yourself, which is, what everybody probably uses that. But how do we get those guys engaged in the program? How do we make it meaningful for those guys? And, I probably spend more time talking to those lower level guys and just making them feel a part of it, because I think our good players recognize that. The good players, the best players, the guys they're all in all the time. I mean, they recognize that. And so now they're going to treat those guys better. And then all of a sudden you got everybody kind of pulling in the same direction, creating that family atmosphere. Another thing that I think we do that I like here is now we're a one school town. We got 12,000 people in our town. And we got a lot of small communities, around here. We're just north of Joplin, Missouri, okay, we're about 2 hours south of Kansas City, so fairly rural towns, smaller towns, and so we have the kids that are going to play for us play in third grade tackle football. They do flag K1, 2. We hold camps for those kids every year. We hold clinics for the coaches in youth football. And we really reach out to our youth guys, our junior high guys, and we want them to feel a part of the Webb City football family. We also involve a lot of our parents, our mom. We have our football moms. And they do something specific for us every week. Our football dads, they also have kind of responsibilities, and we try to be, all inclusive as far as, once you get in this, once you're in this family, man, you're here, for life. And so I think those are just some things that we do. Our youth football guys practice right here on our campus in our practice fields. And, we always tell them, hey, if you ever need to talk to any of our coaches, we're always going to be available. And, and then one of the things that you see so much negativity about youth football sometimes, or youth athletics in general, but one of the things I've always told our coaches at that level, it's like, if you could just develop a passion for that kid. I don't care if you coach, what you coach. Now our guys want to run split back beer when they're in third grade and they want to do this stuff. But it's like, if you could just create a passion that kid loves this game and gets a hook in him, and we'll have him, and we've been blessed. I mean, we'll have, we had 162 kids that played football 9 through 12 here last year, started the season, and our school is about 1,200 students. So I mean, we had 20% of the boys and girls public school, and so we had over 20% of our, maybe 25% of our guy, our boys played football. So, and that's harder to do nowadays probably than ever. We keep close tabs with those guys. And then the last thing maybe, and I don't know if I've answered three, specifically, Joe, but it is ownership. I think kids have to have ownership of your program. Coaches have to have ownership of your program. And for me, that always begins with our seniors. When you think about, how do you like, and every season is different. I always think about the hardest part for me is saying goodbye to your seniors that are graduating, and it's a whole semester's worth of goodbye. And you almost get to the point where you just got to kick them out the door. But you kind of got to let those guys go. And then you got to start working on the next group. And that's the hardest thing is just because if you don't let these guys go, then, you're not giving these guys the amount of time that they need and energy. But but I start with the seniors, and we'll meet a few times, and I think of seniors, and we start. This is a group. You guys are in this thing together as a senior group. I don't know where I heard this at a clinic, but I said, it was similar to what I tell our kids. I heard somebody say, when you talk to your seniors, your leadership group, it's like, I always tell them, I say, hey guys, it's kind of like a big company, like our coaches, we're kind of the board of, or we're kind of the CEOs of this thing. And you guys are like the board of directors, I said, now, the difference is we'll probably, if we lose every game and we all get fired, hey, that we'll probably find another job, but you'll never get a chance to have this year over again. This senior year over. I mean, this is it for you. You got 1 year. This is your last year. And, there's a high percentage of our guys that never play football again after high school. So we want to make sure that they have a chance to pour everything they can into that year. And they kind of direct our program in terms of what, goals and ambitions. I mean, there's usually just one goal our kids have, and that's win a state championship. I mean, that's kind of where we're at. And unfortunately, that's really tough because it's not easy to do. It takes a little bit of everything to have that opportunity. And I've kind of described it as a blessing because it does create high expectation, but it's almost a curse too in times because it's unrealistic expectations sometimes.
That was awesome. Can you give like 2 concrete examples for each of your football moms, 2 things they do, and then your football dads, 2 things they do?
So our football moms, we have a Thursday night dinner. We have a Thursday night. So we have they call it our pregame meal. So after we do our Thursday night practice, which is in, helmets and then game gear and really everybody calls it a walkthrough. After that practice, we have all of our moms, again, this year it was a little different, but we have a team meal and we have almost, we have a large majority of our moms that show up to that. And they prepare a meal for our kids, and for most of our kids, I promise you, it's the best meal they have, or all week. It's ironically too, it's the best attended day that we have every week. Especially this year. I mean, kids may miss on Tuesday and Wednesday, they never miss on Thursday. Easy day of practice.
You were able to still do that this year?
We were, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we used our own campus facilities and we spread them out. I think we had 2 or 3 to a table, and just like we do in our cafeteria, like for lunches at school. But everybody was masked and gloved, and so it was kind of we were really wondering if we could do it, and then really, but the way we looked at it and talking to our admin, it was basically the same as your lunch, like a lunchtime situation. So we were able to do that. And then one of the things I've always done, I don't know how long, I probably haven't always done it, but I'll get them T-shirts. I'll buy them for our moms. I'll buy them T-shirts, and I'll get one of them that's more of a leader in that group. I'll say, hey, I want you to design a T-shirt, pick out the color, pick out the artwork, pick out everything. I said, and I'm going to buy a T-shirt for all the moms. And so, we do that early in the season, and they wear those, and they're really proud of them. And, I kind of, just a couple little things like that makes them really feel like they're a big part of it.
Love it.
Dads,
dads do.
Yeah, the dads. We have 2 things for the dads. Like we have a preseason scrimmage. Actually, we have in Missouri. You can have jamboree. We call it a jamboree. You can scrimmage a couple other teams. You get limited number of plays, and every time we usually either do it here or at Joplin High School, and so it's really close. After that event, and it was different this year, we have a father-son cookout, and then like this year it was outside in our stadium, and it didn't have the same, we just couldn't do as much stuff. But normally what we do, we'll bring our parents, our dads and our players into our one of our theaters here in school, and as soon as the jamboree's over, and that's the first real live thing we've done other than scrimmaging each other, we'll put the film up and we'll watch the film, and we'll go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and we're just watching film with the dad sitting right next to his son, and they're watching film. And what I found with that is I didn't, I guess it kind of came upon this several years ago. I didn't realize how important it was to dads to watch film. Like there's times when I'd get an email or a text message or a call or something from a dad, like, hey, when are you going to put the film up for our next opponent? And it's like Saturday morning, and I'm like, well, we'll get it up there on Huddle pretty soon, and then so those dads enjoy that. And a lot of them are former players. And so one of the things, I mean, we do it for many reasons, but one of them is the dad gets to see their son right there on the field. And, they have an expectation like, hey, my kid's awesome. And then it's like, oh, well, maybe he's not as awesome. When you break that film down, I mean, it doesn't matter who we are. I mean, you can find ways that you can get better. And so we do it for several reasons.
How much time do you spend on that film session?
I bet we spend an hour. And we only have 36 offensive plays, 36 defensive plays, but it's a good hour. Now you got to, what it's good for also for our coaches. And I like this part of it for our coaches. I'm not going to stand in there and yell and scream at that kid in front of that dad. I'm just going to, I'm going to coach him in a calm manner. I'm going to correct him and go on, and generally it kind of sets a tone for a coach. When you're watching film, sometimes we get so emotional watching film, and it's like, hey, we're just going to correct it and we're going to move on. And, that's where I've improved a lot, because I remember those days where, we'd play on Friday and it'd be Monday afternoon after school before we'd watch that game film. And I failed miserably early in my career because I was so mad after watching that film 50 times, and that kid that, made that mistake or a big mistake in a game. And I was so emotional and I was so upset that I would say something that I would generally always regret, and it would be a conflict. And so it's like, hey, we'll watch the film. That's really nice because it's right. It just happened. So it's like, hey, let's go and correct it. And it kind of it's good for everybody. We do some team building. We do a link. We give everybody a chain link, and we do a lot of, a couple other things. We've had former player. This is what I really like. Couldn't do it this year, but like we'll have a former player or maybe a former player and his dad that comes and speaks to that group. And they'll just talk about, hey, man, make sure you guys enjoy this time, listen, coaches, and it's really a good, they'll even tell some funny stories maybe back when they were in high school.
That's awesome. Awesome. All right. And you kind of touched on this once already, but question number 4 is, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you first got started?
Yeah, I did, Joe. This is where relationships, that would be my main goal, my main focus, my main emphasis would be relationships. And not, I think where kids are not that much different, I don't think, as far as how they react. And I mean, what they do is different, but just, how the coaching part of it goes with kids. But I would be much more intentional on, it was also personal to me. Like this kid's not doing this right. And I'm thinking, in my mind, it was because, he was doing that to make me mad. So I would say I've changed a great deal on that. And just being more intentional about, how's things going, what about this, and just enjoying the kids a little bit more. They're going to be challenging. Gosh, I mean, there's not a year goes by that you're not going to have challenging kids or have challenges with your group. And especially where we're at in a public school setting, we're blue collar. We got a high percentage of free and reduced lunch kids. And I mean, hey, those kids, we're going to have some challenges, so if you don't learn how to deal with them, you're really setting yourself up for failure. But I would say that's the first thing. And then the second thing, and this is one that I'd love to hear from others about this one, but leadership. I really thought in the beginning, and even maybe as I went through my career, I thought leadership always happened. I thought the team leaders were always, they always kind of stepped up to the plate, or came to the forefront of your team. But and I think maybe they used to. That was a little bit easier for kids to lead and even others to follow, 20 years ago, 10, 15, I don't know how many, but I think that's really hard now. It's hard for kids to step out in front of others and lead, uh, just because of maybe the negative things that, nobody wants to put themselves out there sometimes.
Those are two great ones. Mine is always leadership. I mean, relationships too. I was thinking, I was, and this is just, I hope this is just age. I hope you can identify with some of this. I was, I was super anti text messaging for some reason. Don't ask me why. And now I text message all the time. And I was super negative Facebook. And I actually had to create one for my wife was a big Facebook person. I created one for her birthday, and former players just swarmed to it. And that was really the first contact from, kids that I coached 15 years ago
Yep.
was through Facebook. And it was just so magical to be able to see those guys and catch up with them. And then the relationship thing, I wish I would have been more intentional early in my career, as I am, hopefully that I am now, how important that relationship is. It's the foundation of everything now. And I was a young guy thinking X's and O's were the key, and weight room was the key. And really the whole time it was those relationships,
Yeah,
both with us and with each other.
I can relate to that for sure.
Well, Coach, you didn't disappoint, man. I was told what a fantastic coach you were, and you are absolutely everything that I was told about. And I sure appreciate you doing this. Our last question is, what is your contact information? And then, do you have anything to promote, or just you have the final word? Anything you want to talk about? So, contact. Are you on Twitter?
Yeah, it's at Roderique, which is Roderique. I'm not a social butterfly. I'm a retweeter and a liker. I very seldom have my own thoughts or whatever, but I do get on Twitter. I'm on Facebook too, at John Roderique. I don't even know what that one is, honestly. Those are about the only two things I do. I get on and look at the pictures. It's a nice way to keep up with people. My email is Roderique at wcr7.org. Everybody in this town has my cell phone number. I probably shouldn't give it out, but I appreciate the opportunity, Joe, to be on here, man. I've had a blast just visiting with you. But I'm not a real big self promoter or anything. I do want to encourage coaches, because the impact that you can have on somebody. When I think back when I was a kid, I lost my dad when I was young. I lost a brother right before I graduated high school, and it was coaches that really made a difference in my life. When I look back now, that many years ago, from the time I was probably 10 years old, coaches were the ones that made the biggest difference in my life. And I love sports, and I would do anything, but the guys that kicked me in the butt when I needed it, the guys that encouraged me when I needed that, the guys that really made a difference in my life were coaches. And we don't know when that moment is that we can impact somebody, but it's every day. And I know I've done that in a positive way. I know I've probably done that in a negative way, unfortunately, but I think being intentional, and I think that's what's been nice listening to you. I think it seemed like we share some similar values, some similar paths maybe, and things. So shoot, my door's always open, email, call, anything, reach out. I'd love to, I'm trying to learn a little bit more all the time.
Well, you did fantastic, Coach, and I sure do appreciate you doing this. And I know you helped a lot of people today. I know I got a page full of notes, and I'm stealing all your ideas that I can. And I appreciate you coming on and doing this, buddy.
Yes, sir. Thank you. It was great to meet you.
Good meeting you. Thank you.